The time has come. You've decided to enter your first major TCG tournament. You know this is going to be a very different experience from your local game store. So let's have a talk about some tips and tricks on how to approach your first major TCG tournament. Welcome back to TCG Psychology, the channel where we turn psychological insights into competitive advantages. Now today we're going to be talking about entering that first major tournament and how we can approach that to have the best time that we can and how to maintain a competitive mindset at the same time. So when it comes to this video, what we'll be looking at are some major pitfalls that we might typically fall into, plus some tips on how to approach that from the mental point of view. So when it comes to major tournaments, often there is an expectation trap that people fall into. So you may be doing really well at your local tournaments and consistently winning those tournaments. However, when we start to look at those major tournaments, these are much larger events. There's a higher level of skill required to be successful in these tournaments. So sometimes the way that we play can not always meet up to our expectations when entering these situations. So when it comes to expectations, the first thing to consider is how we're going to approach the tournament from that expectations point of view. Now remember, when we're at a major tournament, these are often lots and lots of competitors within these tournaments with backgrounds very similar to yours, where they've been very successful at their local stores and they're looking to compete against the best of the best. So in these situations, especially in your first tournament, my biggest piece of advice would be to go in with. So rather than going in with a set goal of, oh, I want to make top cut in my very first tournament, there's quite a high expectation to set, but we need to keep it realistic to what our experiences may be. So the reason we don't want to set a specific goal such as I want to reach top cut in my first major tournament is because let's say you go into that tournament, you lose round one, you lose round two. The gulf between where you currently are and trying to make top cut at that point is going to be quite significant, and that can actually make you perform worse throughout the day. Whereas if we go in with an open goal and we just go in and say, I want to win as many games as possible today, let's see where that takes me. If you go in and lose the first two games, then you're not going to be as tilted compared to if you have set yourself that goal of reaching top cut. So open goals allow you to sort of just see and do your best in those situations, which is a really good place to start when you're entering your first major tournament, because from there, then you have a benchmark of how you've done previously, and then future tournaments past that, you can set more specific goals. Another aspect to manage when it comes to entering your first major tournament is approaching that first round. Now, it's very normal to go into a major tournament and experience some nervousness of the uncertainty around how the first round is going to go. However, there are some things that we can do to approach that first round. Now, this is going to be heightened in your very first major TCG tournament because it's a completely new environment. You're no longer in your local game store. You're no longer in a familiar environment. They're usually big conference halls, lots and lots of people around. So that first round can be quite nerve-wracking when it comes to approaching it. So the first thing that we want to do is to sort of have some fun games in the morning before the tournament itself. So my recommendation would be, if you're going to get to the venue early to sort of familiarize yourself with the environment, have a friend or two to have a couple of warm-up games against, just to get yourself into the flow of it being in that environment. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on these games in terms of the results. Really, what it's just doing is getting you comfortable in playing in a hall, in this hall that you're going to be competing in for the rest of the day. So keep it casual, keep it fun. The aim of these warm-up games is really just to familiarize yourself with the environment and allow yourself to get some of those nerves out in terms of just playing some cards before the tournament itself starts. Now, my second piece of advice for dealing with tournament nerves, and you've heard me say this quite a lot in previous videos, is to really utilize your breathing techniques. This is a really great opportunity to slow down your nervous system. You know, at these situations, it's quite possible that your fight or flight response might be kicking in. So we want to just sort of calm our nervous system down and allow ourselves to feel safe in that environment. So again, long breathing or deep breathing techniques where you're taking in a long inhale and then an even longer exhale. So it's really important to remember that it's a deep breath in, and then we're going to go for a long inhale and a longer exhale. That piece of the exhale being longer is quite key in order for this technique to work most effectively. Finally, when it comes to actually going into that first game itself, it's really beneficial to have that pre-game routine set up. Now, I'll link my previous video talking about pre-game routines, but this is where that comes really beneficial in sort of maintaining consistency in the way that you approach each round, and especially in that first round, we want to treat it with the same consistency that we would treat any other round. So having that consistent routine sort of helps us again be familiar in the way that we're approaching that tournament. Another piece of advice that I have when it comes to preparing for your first TCG tournament is, in the modern day and age, there's so much access to current meta information, deck lists, potential new cards in the meta, that going into that tournament the day before, you might start to hear rumors about certain cards that might be popping up, and you feel like you have to make changes to your sideboard at that point. Now, unless you've play tested and are very familiar with those cards that you're swapping in, my recommendation would be to try and allow yourself to be confident in the cards that you're taking the day before, because if you start to make significant changes at that point, it's no longer that familiar deck that you're ready to play with, and you've made some of those changes, so it's going to impact the effectiveness of the way that you play. So keep to your guns, make sure that you're not just taking on every single piece of information, because you don't want to regret swapping in cards and then end up not seeing those cards that you've heard the rumors might be coming in and joining the meta in that tournament, just to end up performing poorer because you didn't have the consistent deck that you want in the tournament. Of course, when it comes to competing in your first major TCG tournament, the most important aspect is to have fun. These can be quite competitive events, and even if you're not performing to the level that you would be hoping to perform to, you can still have a lot of fun at those lower tables where people are just there to really get all of those rounds in and see where they finish up at the end of the day. I remember my first major tournament, I didn't perform particularly well. I lost my first few rounds, ended up at the lower end of the tables, but still had a really fun day, sort of meeting people, seeing different decks in action, and just enjoying that experience as it was. So go in there, make sure that you have fun. That's the most important aspect, because if you have fun, that's going to motivate you to keep coming back and trying to do better and better in the future. Let me know in the comment section down below what your first major tournament is going to be, or what your first major tournament was. If you know anyone who's entering a tournament, please do feel free to share this video. Make sure to like and subscribe so you're notified when future videos are uploaded. And until the next meta.